All right. We are live, people. So let's go. Let's go trucking mastery tonight. Welcome aboard here, Baxter. So you just pop on. Good to see you, man.
No, Professor, he was working on a straight hourly apprentice rate.
Buy the Books Consulting. It's my company, guys. In case you didn't know, now you know. This is me, Cheston, Bulgin, senior consultant, founder.
Hour two.
This is how you reach us, 888-4BTB now. It's 888-428-2669. You can also go visit us on the web at buythebooksconsultants.com or youraccountingsuperhero.com. And this is the email address that you can reach me at, Cheston@buythebooksconsultants.com. You can also reach us at theaccountingsuperhero.com. Just in case you didn't know, any of those websites will bring you to us. We are the accounting superhero. Okay. So we do these things for businesses, trucking companies as well. We do the accounting, we do QuickBooks advisory, we do tax services, which includes preparation, of course, and compliance things like filing. But we also do the tax strategy and tax planning to make sure that you keep your hard-earned money. We also do some business advisory work, okay? And we do that for a monthly subscription so that it's not a lump sum for any one of these things. We can do that throughout the year so that you can have all these things covered, okay? Or if you don't want the subscription, you can pay more at any given point in time. Talking about tax season, guys, we want to make sure you're prepared for tax season. And today, specifically, we're going to get into just reading financial statements. It's not going to be a very long call. We want to go down the line and look at what financial statements are supposed to look like. We want to understand how to read them as they are. Okay, so we have a live example for you today to make sure that we give you valuable insight. Okay. Let's make sure that's still live for us. Okay. Quick disclaimer before we get started, the following is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered financial, accounting, or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, and or legal professional for specific advice. And of course, we want you to get the value. We want you to get the value out of our conversations here, out of our time spent here together. So if there's any topic that you want to include in order to forward our conversations during these webinars, feel free to do that by reaching out to me via email or on social media at Your Accounting Superhero. That's either Instagram or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is most likely the way you'll get me sooner. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to share another screen here. We're going to get into it, guys. We're going to talk about financial statements and how to read them. So I want you to see, let's do a new share. Yeah, I want you to see publicly traded financial statements because these go under another level of scrutiny. Where you most likely, if you're inside of this conversation, you're a small business, you're a private company, you're not publicly traded. And although that's the case, we really want to understand what it takes to deliver financial statements in a way that's working, that's spot on, that's standardized across the board. Now, even though they're doing this on a larger scale, and it seems as though these companies may be large and huge and they have to do it that way, I invite you to consider that all businesses want to do it this way. Regardless of your size, regardless of how long you've been in business, you want to have your financial statements produced in a way that reflects the truth about your business. And you want to have them produced in a way where you can look at reports that give you insight into how you can move that business forward. You know, the thing about life is that it's great when you and I feel as though we're progressing. When you and I are progressing in life, we're just talking about James Brown because we had James Brown playing, right before the call. And we're talking about, man, James Brown is a GOAT. He's like the greatest of all time at what he does. And I was sitting there listening to the dynamics of his music, the things he would say inside of his songs, and the energy and the vibration behind his music is consistent and reliable for delivering a certain thing, man. It's like, you can feel it, man. People get uplifted inside of what he's doing. And it's not something that's accidental. It's on purpose. Now, the thing that you and I really get in terms of the fulfillment of life, we get fulfilled when we know that we're delivering certain things for ourselves. And really, the essence of that is progress. I mean, this dude was progressive, James Brown. Talk about progressive, man. This dude is the game changer, changed the whole Godfather's soul, right? That's what he was. And it speaks to something specific about how to do things on a high level, how to do things with a certain level of commitment and standard. Really, inside of that is excellence. How I do anything is how I do everything inside of life, business, whatever it is. So if you want to commit to excellence inside of your business, it expands you everywhere in life because there's a dedicated commitment to excellence everywhere. It just becomes a way of being, a way of life, when we're committed to a way of expansion. So I'm saying this because when we do like our record keeping and we run our business, it wants to be in a way where we have processes to help us maintain a certain consistency and progress. What have I been doing historically? And we can say, man, I've been doing great. Or, I may not have been profitable here. And here's the opportunity for me to move forward and actually become profitable, if that's not the case now. Or even if I am profitable, I won this game called profitability. Wow, doing that. I'm like, yes, win inside of that. Now, how can I actually serve more on a higher level? How can I move forward with where I am right now? Take it from this point to the next point. Now, some people get overwhelmed by the thought of constantly moving forward with things in life, or constantly having to do things and like we're never being satisfied is what it could be. People could be left with that, like never being satisfied. And I invite you to understand or consider this thought process is that I could be completely satisfied and still want to progress in life. I can still be happy with where I am and seek to progress. It is actually in the progression of life is where we have fulfillment. It's only when you and I take on something we feel as though we're moving forward with things is where we experience fulfillment to its highest capacity. But how do we do that here inside of the numbers? Okay, we want to have processes and systems in place to, number one, reflect the true reality. We just did a boot camp yesterday for QuickBooks. We showed people how to really take the software and make it simple for themselves. There was no more intimidation, no more confusion. Now you understand how to navigate through there and where you need to spend your time so the time's not being wasted. We talked about how to automate it so that you can really get the reality out of your business without having to spend so much time there. Simple processes, simple systems, understanding like how to organize life through business, right? So those systems are important for us to put in place so that we can see certain things. If there's certain things that we want to see are going to be these numbers here. The numbers come in the way of a financial statement, and they want to tell us a certain amount of information about who we have been inside of business, okay? Reality. This is what we want to see. So let's go line by line here. We're going to talk more about reality in terms of financial statements. Does anybody want to put in the chat what financial statement this is? Shouldn't be too difficult to understand what type of financial statement it is that we're looking at on this screen here. You can type that in the chat if you know what type of financial statement it is that we're looking at right now. If you've been in the calls with me, this should be automatic. Even if you haven't been in the calls with me, it's right here in front of you. So talk to me, tell me what it is, right? Put that in the chat for me right now. Give you about 30 to 45 seconds to respond. Let's go. While we're doing that, let's do this too. Give you about 20 seconds to respond. Good deal, Baxter. Baxter put in here profit and loss statement. Ding, ding. Where do I send the reward? You got it, man. The profit and loss statement, or otherwise known as an income statement. So good. All right, so now take this music off. Pause that. So yeah, this is a profit and loss statement. It's an income statement that we're looking at on the screen. Okay, and not only that, it gives us details over a span of a few years, right? Which is why it's important to have all your financial tracking and reporting systems in place so you can see what we call trends in what you're doing. Now, even inside of what we're looking at, this is through a Schwab account. I'm just doing some research through a Schwab account of some publicly traded companies. This company is called Diamondback Energy. Okay. Now we can see a trend established, and this is the more important thing that we want to see inside of our financial statements. Am I progressing in this is what we want to know. Okay, so we can look at in 2018, this is most likely in the billions, 2.176 billion in revenue. That's what this most likely is. A lot of times on these financial statements through publicly traded companies, they'll say in terms of thousands or whatever that is. But I imagine this to be billions. And yep, so values are in millions. So that might be 2.1 or 21 billion or 2.1 billion in 2018. Okay. Now we can see in 2019 there was an uptick. Right, they made actually 1.8 billion more, just about. Then there's a drop off in 2020. And we know what happened in 2020. This is what I mean by a number story. When I see that, it's like, oh, that makes sense. In 2020, there would be a downtick. Why would there be a downtick in 2020? Well, COVID in 2020, COVID hit. So there's a downtick there, which makes total sense. And at the same time, this top line number that we're looking at is total revenue brought in, by the way. Right, this is the amount of money that they generated total. They brought in this amount in 2018. They brought in this amount in 2019. They brought in this amount in 2020. They went down and went up significantly in 2021. They came back with a vengeance. Fantastic year, right? Showing some strength in resolve here and coming back so strong. And then again, there's an increase here. It's a significant increase, man. It's like 3.1. or almost 3 billion, right? And increase in revenue. Fantastic. But look at this, guys. Like these numbers, the operating expenses pretty much stays consistent, like between 2019 and 2022. Like at 2019, operating expenses were almost identical as it was in 2022. The difference is they generated a lot more revenue. They were a lot more profitable in terms of net operating income, okay? Which is like, wow, huge. But the thing here we want to look at too, like these are trends we're looking at, guys. So we want to pay attention to these things. We look at operating expenses, next line down, we can see like, man, their revenue went down in 2020, but their operating expenses went up significantly. It's like, wow. Curiosity, right? We know COVID hit. We know that, a lot of people were getting benefits for keeping people on the payroll. It makes sense for their expenses to stay somewhat the same as it was the prior year. But then I'm asking myself, well, why is it that their operating expenses went up so high in 2020? What about that outside of them maintaining their employees allow these expenses to basically more than double, almost triple, right? This is where I would dive in to see the trend. All right. Now, this process that we're going through right now is called reading a financial statement. All right. Just in case we didn't know. It's important to actually look at these numbers. It's important to look at these numbers and read a financial statement to know where we stand financially. Just by me going through this process, like right here live on the call, I'm pretty sure that you guys are maybe gaining some value out of the questioning or the things that I'm actually drawing your attention to. inside of these statements already this early in the conversation. A lot of us don't even look at statements in a way where we're saying, well, what happened? Well, what's going on here? We just go about our day to day and then submit reports to our tax people, or we submit reports to our lenders, and we just know that bottom line number or that top line number we think we're looking at is what is the end all be all. And there's so much more in between. There's so much more to go along with this. There's so much in terms of, well, what happened? What really caused these numbers to actually come about inside of the day-to-day operation of the business? We start asking these questions, we'll start finding answers. Okay. So going over a financial statement from the top to the bottom is a tremendous value inside of your own business. Now, even if, let's say, you don't have the processes in place to reflect the reality of your business. And a lot of the small business owners, believe it or not, I know that's not you, don't have the processes in place to make sure that the numbers that are reflected in their financial statements are accurate and spot on. I know that's not you. You guys are here, right? So you take care of your financials down to the penny, right? But at the same time, a lot of small business owners do not do this. Like we have small business owners that get into business. I remember when I first started as an entrepreneur, when I was way back when I was like 9, maybe 8 or 9 years old in my entrepreneurship journey, right? I would just go door to door and get cash from people. I'm like, yes, I got cash for doing this. Cutting lawns, right? Cut lawns, get cash. Shovel the snow, get cash. Entrepreneurship journey began, right? So inside of that process, I really didn't, I knew that I was getting paid a certain amount for the job, but then the money would come into my pocket and it would just like go. I wouldn't have it later on, something would happen to it, and I wouldn't really, take accounting of what it is. So there was no measuring up performance when I was a little kid, but I knew I was just happy to get paid for doing anything. The problem with that is that when we grow up and we start real businesses, that's going to cause a lot of suffering, because you can't just operate like that and expect to be able to eat as a business owner consistently and reliably. And not only just eat, but set goals for personal life, like personal life goals, such as freedom, wealth, legacy, those things. You can really accelerate the process of achieving freedom, wealth, and legacy just by doing what we're doing here tonight. What I can measure, I can manage, and what I can manage, I can master. So by taking the time to go through here like this, now we have a process, not just know exactly what came in, top line number, but we have number two, we have, what the other line items are comprised of, like what happened with the money once it came in to leave us with that bottom line number, right? Net profitability wise, okay? And then we have the opportunity to be here and compare, well, how did I do versus last month, last quarter, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? What has been the trajectory of my business? Are we flat inside of the development of this? Is it staying the same? Or are we on an upward trajectory? Or are we declining inside of where we are in our financial position? And these are the things we want to start asking ourselves when looking at a financial statement. So much power inside of this, guys. I remember when I first took on, like thinking life was a mystery. There was a moment, there's a time period in life where I thought, things were a mystery. Like I would have to work so hard and everybody else would get results. And then I would just work hard and grind through stuff and just not get out of things that I was doing. Well, like everybody else would get out of it. Like God, for whatever reason, decided to put a black cloud over me. I would just work hard and not get a result, no matter what I did. Right. So it was just like personal. I was the one. Right. I'm special. Right? That's how I believed it to be. And then one day I realized that life didn't have to be a mystery. If I watch certain things, if I learn, get this, guys, if I learn certain patterns to life, if I identify the pattern, I can actually get a result, like with high probability. So my job in life from that point on was to identify the patterns. And I could choose the high probability outcome and get a result based on that. And no longer was I just cursed. I could actually get results. And the process here that we're going through is identifying like patterns. But first I have to be able to see them. I have to put on the lenses, right, and capture all the things so I can see it. I have to actually have an environment where I can see these things. And your financial tracking and reporting is the environment by which all of this can be seen. Okay. They do a good job here, of course, because they got high level accounting and third-party audits to make sure that everything that's reported is what it needs to be within marginality. Okay. So we look at these things like top line, revenue increasing. You can see the trend. Boom, these trends are this uptrend. Trend is going up. And then we can see the operating expenses pretty much stay flat except for this 1 year. Boom. This means that, man, the story unfolds here, right? For most of the time, and as I'm reading this, reading this financial statement, for the most of the time, they've been able to maintain a level of improved efficiency over time. I just read that story. The story says I've been able to maintain a level of improved efficiency over time. And basically that means that while I'm able to produce more income while minimizing my costs, I'm doing that better and better as time moves forward. Because expenses really don't go up, but revenue is going up significantly with an outlier in the middle. And that middle outlier was a pandemic. Okay. So we can see these things. Then we can look at the total operating income, which is net operating income. This is really according to, before they take into account other expenses being accumulated depreciation and amortization. Okay. Which is like, wow, man, these guys are doing really good, improving to this degree. We can see the trend still moving up here with the outlier in 2020. Same story, like consistent reliability, man. These companies doing really well over time. Then we can look at the income before tax, which was relatively the same trend as operating income. Then after tax income, same trend we're looking at. And then net income before extra items, okay? We can look at that as well. And then we have the bottom line numbers, like net income after all is considered. The trend is still the same. Look at this, guys. I'm impressed by the way that Diamondback has performed. Like by looking at, like right now, by looking at this, I'm actually impressed by the way Diamondback has performed over time. Right, like the way that the trajectory is going. And these are the things that you want to be able to say for yourself. Like you want to be able to look at your financial statements in a way and says, man, I'm actually grateful for the fact that we're producing these results over time. And it's like going on this trajectory. But how many of us actually know the trajectory? Like, where are you headed? Like in terms of like operational efficiency, in terms of like revenue increase, net profitability, like what is that trajectory looking like and how are you improving upon that as you go along? These are things that you can look at to let you know there's something to identify in terms of a gap. Like where are we not performing in the way that we want? And even if we got and won our game, we can say, yes, I won that game. Now, how can I get to the next level? Right? Those are the things that you want to be able to see here inside of the reporting. Now, for a small business owner, even for these guys, there's a granularity. When I say granularity, I mean, there are more detailed things that we can look at even inside of what we're looking at here. We talk about total operating expenses. There's so many things that go into total operating expenses that we just don't see here. But if we broke it down, we could really see exactly what's impacting these numbers. We could see, well, what caused this to jump to 82.94 in 2020, so much beyond the regular operating costs or the median operating costs that we see, right? But they would be able to determine those things, and I guarantee you, they said, "Oh man, we know what we did, and we're just not going to do that anymore," and that's why their numbers are more efficient afterward. And then if we come down the line here, we can see income available to the common excluded extra items. So this is going to be the same. There's not extraordinary items. And then down the line here, and this is including the extraordinary items to bring it back into what the impact is of the extraordinary items, which here you see the numbers are different, but here there is no extraordinary items to impact the numbers. Now you see here the pro forma net income. It's left blank. Pro forma is really a projected. There's no projection here because this company is actually operating as live. It's like out here in reality right now. So there's no pro forma to deal with. Right? That's why that stays blank. Then we have here the normalized income before taxes, which is that number that we would see at like toward the top there. Right? This actually included, this may exclude interest expense because this number is a little different. And then here, of course, we have the after-tax income, which will also looks like it's excluding another amount here too. Okay, interest rather. So to be specific. And then the total bottom line number, 4434. All right, so we just read this thing top to bottom, and there's a lot of terminology in here. So like some people steer away from like reading financial statements. How many of us, like by show of hands, really don't like looking at financial statements? They just kind of steer away. You can raise your virtual hand or you can put a 1 in the chat. If you just don't like looking at financial statements in your pastime, your downtime. Who does not? Who does? And if you love looking at financial statements, put a 2 in the chat. All right, let me know. There are a couple. I mean, there are not too many people that just like sitting here looking at financial statements. I'm sitting here just looking at this stuff tonight, and I figured I hop on a call while I'm doing this and start looking at these financial statements with you, because it's interesting to me to see exactly like the patterns of life through numbers. Right. So good. And I see, Pearlie, you like looking at financial statements. It's a good place to be. Now, the real good thing to look at is K1. It gets into more detail financially about what they spent money on. Now, this is the first time I'm actually looking at a Schwab online brokerage account that gives you financial statements. And a lot of times, like what you can do to get insight into your own performance, what you can do is do the research on an account like this, a brokerage account like this, and find a company in the industry, in the same industry, like a high performing company, like a publicly traded company in the industry, and see what they do. Like, what are they spending money on? You can get an idea of the things that you need to be spending money on in your company. And as far as like the margins, like profit margins, you can look here, and this is a pretty high profitability net income. So I would look at the net income before taxes as like my margin target for my business, right? Because they have this income here before taxes, net income before taxes. I'm sorry, net income before taxes right here, line item. And I'll take that number and get my margin here. And really, if you keep 5736 out of 9643, that's 60%, man. That's crazy. And I say that's crazy because, net income margins for like these industries, they're pretty slim. When I say slim, they're less than 10%. These people are at 60% in 2022. Really good place to be. Now, what I would do for my own research in a company that I'm developing or building out, if it's in the trucking industry, I'd take a sample of a few separate different companies. I'll even take an industry like sample of financials, like what it is expected inside of the industry, because you can look at an industry as a whole and see exactly what those numbers are averaged across all the companies that comprise that industry, and then see where you want to line up All right, so that's kind of what I do when I'm looking at researching an industry, the business, is to say, okay, what is the expectation here in terms of profitability? And we're talking about a lot of this today, guys, because it translates into understanding what to expect for your business. Like if you can look at the trend of things, like see the trend, there's an upward trend for this company, and the expectation is to continue upward. We want to take this trend up another notch. So basically, if we look at the trend here, man, they gained, I'm just looking at this offhand without even doing the math on the calculator. It's like, man, that's a lot of growth per year, percentage wise, like return, like growth percentage, growth rate. So they had, doing this math here, guys, bear with me a second. Right, it's 5 years of growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like 60, almost 69% per year average growth, right? I would say that's pretty, like, well, the way I'm looking at it, I would say that's not a sustainable growth rate for any company. But if I were in my company here, like running it, I would look to be like in the game of achieving that year after year. Like, because we've already benchmarked it over the last 5 years. Can we perceivably continue that growth rate? Or how do we actually continue that pattern is what I would be asking myself as the owner of that company. Right? Man, just for me saying that, like, I don't know if people like think this way a lot of the times. I just assume that like a lot of people who own businesses would think this way. What I just said is like, I would look to continue that pattern, and I would only be able to get to that decision, right, that I just got to by doing what I just did, which is look at these numbers right now to understand what has been happening over time to give me a choice of what I want to do next. Right, and set a target, and then whatever it takes to build out that target is what I do. Take actions toward that, and I can look at all the things that we did up until now to get to the point that we are, and continue to take actions on that consistent level to build it out, and then look at other opportunities, like in terms of like where the economy is going and where technology is going, and all those things, in order to take that company to where it needs to be. Right now, but based on what I just said, I want to hear somebody give feedback, because I just said something there. Like, what are you really getting out of what I'm sharing with you right now in terms of me just being here live, going through numbers? What are you getting out of this conversation? I want to hear some feedback. And I know some of you just stepped on the line, you kind of jumped into the middle of this conversation, and it's okay, because I just said something about the numbers that like what I was just looking at and the interpretation of it and the choices I would make, and there's something to be gleaned from that. Like there's a world of information inside of what I just shared. And I want to check in to see if you guys are actually getting what I'm actually putting into this conversation, if that's landing with you, in other words. So go. Who wants to actually put themselves out there to share what they're getting out of this? I know it might be a little bit kind of nucleus inside of this thing, man. It's like a lot of numbers going on. Anybody want to share?
I'll take a stab at it. I did just jump in the middle of it, but the way that the income coming in, you want to make sure it's all broken down in the categories so that it don't look like you made $800,000 a year as profit. So if you want to make sure it's all broken down so that when it comes down to taxes, because of your profit margins are slim with everything, you want to make sure that it's categorized right so that for tax purposes, it shows that you are spending, the cost of operating your business, you are spending and using that $800,000 that look like it's all profit, but really it's not. It's a lot less than that. I guess I'm not an accountant, but like I know that if it's not categorized right, it's going to look like you're pocketing more money to the government and you're really not.
Yeah, that is true. That's absolutely true inside of making sure we're categorizing things. And thank you for sharing that, Derek, because now, first and foremost, I know you came in a little bit later in the conversation, but first and foremost, want to make sure we have all the systems in place to do that. Like whatever it takes to build out the system so that you have a reflection of the inflow and outflow of your company and your business. You want to have those systems in place so that you really see the truth. And yeah, exactly. QuickBooks Online, that's another thing that we can use. Like I said before, I think you guys hopped on a little later. We just did a boot camp yesterday for QuickBooks Online. That was pretty intense stuff. The boot camp that we did for QuickBooks, really great to be involved with. And yeah, that's a part of your systems, man, to make sure that you're tracking everything. And it's only as good as the users and the integrity of that business that uses the software and uses the technology. If you don't have the systems like working in the way that they're designed, then something could be off, and we don't have that level of categorization that you were just talking about, Derek. You want to know that everything that you're using for your business is connected to that platform or whatever you're using to gain the information so that you know what's happening in your business. You want to make sure you're putting together all those things to make sure that you're getting all the information and data in one place so you can see. Now, when you can see this, and I heard you say about taxes so that you're not overpaying in taxes, and there's so many things that go along with it. Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that you're not overspending in taxes because you're overstating your income and didn't take into account the actual expenses that were incurred when you brought that money in. Yeah, 100%. That's what it wants to be. The other thing to consider inside of this conversation is choice. Now, let's say like it's October of 2023, and I have all my systems in place to track my financials down to the penny, and I can see, what my profitability is, and I'm tracking the profit like more than $1 million this year. I'm like, man, I don't really want to show that much income this year because that completely exposed me to like a lot in taxes. Now I have some choices to make, right? I have some choices to make. And like all that was considered, right? I already took into account all my deductions and everything else. Now I have some new choices available. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to really spend so much. I don't want to spend taxes on $1 million plus. I want to drop that net income down to where I'm not paying so much in taxes. I don't want to pay taxes on that $1 million. I want to pay less. If I could pay zero, I'll pay zero legally. So what would I actually do now from this point forward? Well, there are things that I can do strategically where I can actually keep the money, but not pay taxes on the money. I just need to shift some things. I need to shift some behaviors, shift the money into certain vehicles so that now I'm getting incentives. Like number one, incentivized by deduction. It's a deductible expense. What else can I deduct? What can I take away? Okay, I can look and see, well, I didn't max out my retirement this year. Maybe I want to max out retirement this year. I got a little extra money, so let's put some money toward retirement to max that out. Deferred program there, right? Let's see. There's some other things that we can invest in terms of equipment right now. We can actually expand the business, grow income next year, and get the equipment now so that we're not paying taxes on the extra money. So we can get some equipment here. That's a pretty good strategy to use. That's simple, straight enough, straightforward. What about credits? What kind of credits are available to me right now? Well, what are our behavior practices when it came to hiring people? Well, maybe we want to shift out how we're hiring people so that we have more credits available. Right? Oh man, they have an incentive through this American Rescue Plan. Now we can actually take advantage of this investment tax credit. Let's see how we can take advantage of that investment tax credit. I don't know that we didn't make as much money before, but now we can start looking at the opportunities available in this investment tax credit because now we're making more money and it might be available to use right now. We don't have to carry that forward because now we have a tax bill. What kind of other companies could I start? Oh man, is there a charity or foundation that we can create? Like all these things start to come out, like, and down the line, there's so many more things that we can start doing, right? Inside of our thought process. But now we wouldn't even think to do these things if we didn't have access to this information that we're looking at right now. Rather than saying, oh man, we need to get some cleanup work done, tax time coming, and the end of the year is already here, and January, February comes, and now we're putting things together. What? You mean I made $1 million? Yeah, you didn't know this? Oh man, I didn't know I was making that much. Well, too late now. Now you gotta pay taxes on that thing. Well, you have the money, I guess, because you made $1 million, but now you got to pay extra in taxes, right? But this is a choice that we're talking about. And you're right, number one category, most business owners. What is the number one category that most business owners document incorrectly? From what I've seen, people don't really understand how to categorize loans. like small business owners. Like there's an area inside of like development of business early on, and even multiple years. I've seen people who have been in business for a while. They don't understand how to categorize loans and payments to loans and everything. So they think they're deducting things when they're not deducting things. People don't understand depreciation a lot of the times if you're a business owner. Like, well, what do I do here, right? In terms of depreciation. How much can I take? What's the strategy here? Is it a straight line? Is it double decline in balances? Is it going to be bonus depreciation? Are we going to take the 179 deduction? Is that eligible for us to do? Are we just going to do units of production? All these things that go into categorization of deductions, like when it comes to depreciation or loans, I think those are the biggest things that people mess up as small business owners or the entrepreneurs. We just don't have the accounting background inside of it. The benefit here's a benefit of me, right? I realize this. I'm an entrepreneur first and foremost. That's how I was born. That's how I was built as an entrepreneur. And before I became like the person inside of finance and accounting, I was always an entrepreneur. But I had a good knack for numbers. And then I just fortified that with an education, right? And I went back to school and made sure I was legit inside of finance and accounting, because I already knew that I gravitated toward that when I was an entrepreneur. Like the thing that we're looking at, I used to do this like in my downtime. Some people would go and play video games or hang out and drink with people, and some people would spend time watching a lot of TV. Me, I would pull up 10Ks. And that's what I would do. I would pull up 10K reports, and I would look at financial statements. I'll look at YouTube videos watching financial ratios. That's what I would do. I would want to understand how companies are performing well and what indicates what a good performing company would look like. That's what I would do, right? So I already did that stuff. Then I went back to school to learn these things, right? Even more grounded inside of the educational background. So that's the benefit of me, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't do that. And the benefit of me coming from an entrepreneur perspective is that I don't really have, I've heard accountants, they talk about things like accountants, they'll speak about things in terms of accountancy, but there's no application and boots to the ground inside of entrepreneurship. How does that actually impact what I'm doing right now? Right. I just want to know that at the end of the day, I get to make my money, keep it, and I'm doing things the right way. As an entrepreneur, that's what I want to know. I want to know that I can go hard in, full out, and make sure that I'm delivering the intention, which is to make money in my business, achieve freedom, wealth, and legacy, keep the money that I actually go out here and work hard to make. Right. And I can grow it faster without friction and knowing that I'm above reproach. Right. Those are the things that I was looking at as an entrepreneur, but more so accountants would look like, okay, the debits and the credits, that's what they would talk about. They would talk about, the rules and regulations in accounting terms. But then there's like, well, what do I do? That's the thing. What do I do? How do I execute? What am I actually here for? That's more so how I'm built. Like, how am I going to use this stuff? So that's why I went back to school, was really for my own business. I want to be able to use this stuff to move my businesses forward, right? So that's the benefit of approaching it from an entrepreneur perspective, is that, we don't have those things that you're talking about there, Charlene. It's like, well, we know how to categorize these things, like by the book. That's why the company is called By the Books Consulting rather. Right. So we know this stuff. We know like how to handle depreciation. We know how to handle like leases when they come on board. We know how to handle when we purchase equipment and where that goes, and, you know, and how that's treated financially, right? We know how to classify, you know, travel expenses when they come around. Like what is a business related travel expense? What is not a business related travel expense? You know, what can I legitimately deduct? What's considered ordinary and necessary in my business? You know, those things are there for me as a business owner now because I have that fundamental understanding, right? And then all the systems that we need in order to track it so that it's accurate. There's also an understanding of that over here where I am, right? So the thing that you want as a business owner is to really have that in your corner as well. If you don't have that basic understanding, that's why people like me or other professionals exist, so that you can have that understanding. But you come to these calls here tonight so that you can have a conversation with these people on a high level, because at some point you're not going to be able to fully rely on just the other people to have your business's best interest on their mind at all times. You're the only one, right? There is no help coming for you at the end of the day. You are the one. So because you are the one, you want to have an understanding, to have conversations and know what questions to ask when it comes to these areas. But tonight we're learning how to look at financial statements. So when you look at a financial statement, you can say, well, what is that? We did this. Is that realistic? Is that really what happened? Did we do that really? And you can be able to dive in and look into all the transactions that make up that number and say, well, that really isn't how it is supposed to be, because they got some other things mixed in here that may not apply to this category, right? So you want to be able to do those things for yourself, okay? And I know I'm saying a lot here inside of this aspect of it, but it's super important to be able to have these skill sets and understanding in your business somehow, some way. Okay. Great question about that, by the way, Charlene, because sometimes we just don't know like what to classify inside of our business and how to classify them. Everything comes down to integrity. Like there's a choice that we make in our business and how to treat certain things, and we just honor that over and over again inside of the business. Okay. Now, with that being said, we're talking about this as it relates to taxes. And it was a great comment that you brought up, Derek, about knowing the difference between what it is that you brought in total revenue versus what you actually made in net income. And that's how we determine that. So you want to have those systems that we're talking about in place so that we know that we're not leaving money on the table in terms of deductions, deductible income. All right. Now, we just looked at the income statement tonight. We didn't look into any other financial statement tonight. I think that this is good enough for where we are. Now, based on this conversation tonight, how many of you guys actually see yourself taking this information and utilizing it some way, shape, or form inside of your business as we move into the 2024 year? Now, if you see yourself being able to use this in a day-to-day to understand your business and your financials, put a 3 in the chat. If you don't see yourself being able to really understand and utilize this, put a 4 in the chat. All right, this is see where you stand with everything. It's important that we do this, guys. We acknowledge where we are with things so that we can find the gaps inside of our business and identify where we want to take it from here. Like identify how to bridge those gaps, in other words. Good deal. All right. So good. Now you have some information to run with. So utilize that. Understand how to read your financial statements. Understand how to read your income statement, profit and loss statement, specifically based on what we had here tonight. Okay. I guarantee you spend time here, a little bit of time. It doesn't have to take a whole lot. You don't have to be like me. I can get lost in these things, right? Some people get lost on their phone. I get lost in stuff like this. Like, man, where'd the time go? Been here for hours, right? But you don't have to do that. You can just spend a few minutes, a few moments here looking at financial statements to see exactly where you stand with your business. Okay. You want to take that time. All right, guys. That is it for tonight. Been a good conversation to be with you, or to be in with you. And I will see you our last call will be next week before we start pivoting and focusing on tax season. Okay? Take care, guys. Have a good week.
You too, Cheston. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
The adoration of the world.
Cheston.
Hey, appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.